What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Track 32, the Rook and the Med Guy. Obviously, I'm your host, the Rook, and I'm joined by the medical guy. The wild card round and divisional round has just completed, and so we're going to be covering, the NFC and AFC matchups, which honestly, the entire slate was very entertaining. Almost every single game outside of, I guess, maybe the Ravens and Texans was a close one, but it was exciting until, the late in the second half. But a great slate of NFL games, which we're going to get into depth on, as well as predicting the upcoming championship games. We're also going to do a little, mini segment on Josh Allen with Shatter the Script, and of course the DB list, as well as finishing off with some of our track rankings, our top 3 playoff games. But if you're a first-time listener, we wanted to let you guys know you can follow, and subscribe to this podcast on any platform: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Spotify and YouTube are our video platforms, and audio is strictly on Apple Podcasts. You can find us on Instagram at trak.pod or on Twitter at the TRAKpod. So anything out of there, you'll find our link tree. You can find us on any platform, however you want to listen to us, whatever content you want to see. So if you're first time, or if you've been here the whole time, thank you for joining in, and hope you enjoy the episode. With that being said, the medical guy, welcome to Track 32. I believe this is around our 65th total episode. So we've been grinding. We've been truly grinding.
Yeah.
And speaking of guys that like to grind, we got Josh. We got Josh Allen. This dude, I mean, you can't really say enough about him in terms of this season. I mean, this man led a team that struggled all season long. When Josh Allen did not show up, we said it every episode practically, that when this dude did not show up to play, then this team truly struggled. They would lose against teams they would not lose, that they shouldn't have lost to. But when you got Josh Allen to show up, which was a majority of the time, obviously, since they've won, around 11 games, including a playoff game, is that you got a spectacular performance. And I think that really truly showed how valuable Josh Allen is for this franchise and for this team. And obviously, we'll get into a little bit later, after you kind of give your take on the Shatter script about how, maybe, facing the big bad Thanos is maybe the only thing stopping. And I've got some insight on that I'm going to get into as well. But I wanted to start off by saying, those things about how valuable Josh Allen is, but at the same time, as the season has progressed, we've also seen how much more valuable Josh Allen is compared to Stephon Diggs. And now people are starting to question if Diggs is a number 1 receiver. I saw a stupid post on TikTok. It was I think it was the same guys that exposed Dov Cleveland, but they were talking about, I don't think it was one just like it, but they talking about head-to-head comparisons of Diggs. I was lost. I was flabbergasted by the guys they picked over Diggs. Pickens is a prime example of a guy he took over Diggs. But yeah, I want to know your thoughts. I mean, obviously, Josh Allen doesn't get it done in the playoffs. We're going to get into the game breakdown, but, just on Josh Allen himself, his journey this year, the past couple of years, not making it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. And so not to take anything away from Josh Allen, because he's a great player, great quarterback, and, all the intangibles there are almost elite. And just kind of the take I have on it, and I guess shattering the script is when he gets into the playoffs, right? And we talk about how, who he loses to and yada, yada, but I don't think anybody's talked about who he wins against. And so that's kind of what I have listed here, okay? And so he has wins in 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023 in the playoffs, okay? 2020. His 2 wins were, first one was against the Colts, and the quarterback was Phillip Rivers. And so second game he won was against the Baltimore Ravens, and you're like, well, Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson suffered a concussion in the third quarter, and Tyler Huntley had to finish the game. Okay. Right. 2021, he wins, big game, great game. Loses to he wins. The game he won was against the Patriots. Quarterback, Mac Jones. Okay. 2022, Miami Dolphins wins, has a phenomenal game. Okay. Not taking anything away from him. Guess who the quarterback was for the Miami Dolphins?
The backup.
Skylar Thompson. I don't even think he's on a roster anymore. Okay. 2023 wins against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Who's the quarterback? Mason Rudolph. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm not taking anything away from him because in a lot of these playoff games, he's got phenomenal numbers in the playoffs. I'll go ahead and say it. Like, I'm not going to take anything away from him. But when you look at his wins, and I guess the script we're shattering, and the one I'm trying to make is the goalpost moving for certain players, right?
Yes.
And so the goalpost moves for certain players, but then we only focus on who we lose to and not who we win against and stuff like that. And I just kind of saw something about it. And I was like, well, I want to go look at this. I don't want to be like saying stupid stuff and being like, oh, well, blah, blah. But like when you look at his wins, it's against like he's the better quarterback by far.
Right.
And when he plays, and I know it's Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow, and you can say what you want to say about Joe Burrow, but when he faces those bigger quarterbacks and those big-time quarterbacks, he seems to lose to them. And my shatter of the script on Josh Allen is I think where he got so much better this year is when the new offensive coordinator for the Bills took over. And what I'm thinking went on in that quarterback room, in that offensive room, is basically the offensive coordinator said, like, hey, you have to stop making these crazy plays, and we don't need you to be Superman all the time. And if you look at all the stats, and another thing I've kind of noticed was that it seemed to me like the OC was saying, like, hey, you can, like, you're an athlete. Like, you're a better athlete than a lot of people on the field. If you see it, run. And if you look, his number of carries ticks up just a tad, and he had a lot of rushing TDs, and he also had a drop in interceptions, and especially bad interceptions.
Yeah.
And those games were a lot better and a lot cleaner. Now, and to your point, they started incorporating more of those tight ends, more of the running backs and stuff like that. And I think that's what is going to get him over the hump even more, beating these guys, is not making that mistake and being okay with taking that 10-yard gain instead of the 30-yard gain, where we saw multiple times in that last drive where he, tried to bomb it down the field when he had an open guy. And then the next play did the same thing when he had an open guy right there. And so that's just kind of my whole take in it is why don't we, or why did the goalposts get moved on other people? And then Josh Allen, it's like, oh, well, he loses to Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow, so we can't say anything about him. I just think that's kind of contradicting. So
yeah, I think those are excellent points, and that goes hand in hand, luckily, with what I was kind of going to talk about here. Is me and Hunter were talking about it, is that if you put Josh Allen in the NFC and compared his quarterback, freakness to the rest of the NFC, where you got Purdy, Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, and all those kinds of guys, versus the AFC, where you've got multiple MVP and MVP candidates every year. You're basically going against the Thanos gauntlet in the AFC every year. Okay, I'm going to beat it was supposed to be Tua. I'm going to beat Mahomes. Okay, gotcha. If I get past Mahomes, okay, now I got to beat the MVP Lamar Jackson. Okay, gotcha. And then I get to the NFC, and you're clearly the better quarterback. And so we're talking about how if Josh Allen hypothetically was in the NFC, we would probably think that hypothetically he would have already been in a Super Bowl or won one. So yes, there is that factor to play in the AFC. But if you're going to be the best of the best of the best, you got to beat the best. And there are specific quarterbacks who had those exact same adjustments that you were talking about, where less turnovers. Yeah, he did kind of still have that fumble problem, but less turnovers, not making careless mistakes, and it made a dramatic difference in their performance. Hence, Dak Prescott in his career year this year, this best year on paper. And we talked about it all preseason, and we compared Josh Allen and Dak Prescott together. I don't want to put them in the same name right now. I'm just saying, put it in perspective. Last year, we had this narrative where it was like, who has the most turnovers, since 2021 or whatever it was, and their years this year and how they just transformed. But you look at his playoff path and Dak's playoff path and players like them, and you want the first thing ESPN said was, I know that we're supposed to come on here and defend Josh Allen, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go against the grain, and I'm going to kind of attack him. And you're like, whereas on a quarterback like Dak's side, it's, I know we're supposed to disrespect Dak here, but I'm going to go against the grain and defend him. And it's just, we talk about double standards all the time, and you bring up amazing points with that. And it's like, if you're going to talk about Josh Allen, yeah, you have to be real. When he plays the best quarterbacks, and yes, he is a freak, and yes, he is an outstanding athlete, and he's valuable to their team, franchise, whatever, and he carried this franchise, sure. But you have to beat the best. And it's the same applies to a guy like Dak, or a guy like Jalen Hurts, or a guy like Brock Purdy. Jared Goffson had a pretty favorable matchup in playoffs. He's going to go against a great roster. So, yeah, those are excellent points there. Which we'll get into it more with the Bills versus Chiefs game analysis as well. But I'll let you do the move into the DB list presented to you by the medical guy.
Yeah, and so get into the 2-minute drill. Starting off with the DB list. We won't go into injury analysis right now. But to start off, I got a few of them. Starting off with an honorable mention one, just because we probably got to keep this in there for a little bit until the pain goes away. But Dallas Cowboy fans, and then / me, because I made some picks on the last podcast, and majority of them did not hit. Now, I did say it came down to whoever had the better kicker, and the Buffalo Bills ended up whiffing on that one. And so that kind of helped me a little bit, but my other picks were just completely wrong and out of the water. And then next, this is kind of a funny one. Take it however you may, but I kind of agree with it. But, you know, the patriarchy is on the DB list. I don't know if you saw, but in the Oscars this past week, Ryan Gosling and his character Ken and song Ken, I'm Just Ken, got nominated at the Oscars for the Barbie movie. Don't know if you saw the Barbie movie, but it was basically defeating the whole patriarchy that, you know, the male species has created. And so it's just kind of ironic that one guy in it wins an award for the movie and gets nominated.
That is hilarious. Boom, baby!
I was like, man, that's a tough look. And so that made it on there. Second, I don't know if you saw the video come out, but Iowa and Ohio State in women's basketball play a couple nights ago. Caitlin Clark was running off the court and committed a tech of her own. And what I want to say about her committing a tech was that from multiple angles, it looked like a massive flop. And so she was running off the court and obviously made contact with a fan, and then pulled a LeBron James and flailed and fell all over the court. And then they came out with a press conference about it. And it was just like, from those different angles, it was like, dude, just it wasn't that big of a deal and whatnot. And she didn't get hurt or anything. So I thought that was kind of a weird look on it. And then number one on the DB list, don't know if you saw this, but Chuck Schumer, senator for New York, I believe.
Yeah.
Wants the government to crack down on Zen production, says it is a tub of disaster or whatever. And it's like, it's kind of ironic. Someone from New York, you know, just, you know, we finally have something good in this world, and, you know, something that makes people happy. And it's like, nope, we got to stop it. We got to do something. We got to tax it extra. We got to do something else. And so it's like, brother, calm down. Like, just let us have our fun.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we're, you know, middle-class individuals. We just need something. Everybody's got their vice, and this is ours. And it's not necessarily hurting people outside of their own choice. So just let us be. Let us be, man. Just let us enjoy life just for a little bit. So
let us be white, please.
Okay, there's that too.
Let me rephrase that. Let us white males be white males. We like our Zens.
Yeah, I don't think Zens are discriminatory. So I think they could be.
I don't think so. Everybody. I think they are.
So, but yeah, so I thought that was like, with all the things going on in the world, and then you're wanting to crack down on that. I mean, it's not like the 90s where, you know, local medical stores were pushing, you know, narcotics and whatnot and destroying actual communities. It's just nicotine, my guy. Like, calm down. So I feel like you got more important things to worry about. But
Absolutely.
that wraps up my DB list. Thought it was a lot. It was a lot fun. A lot of fun to do like different things and not, sports related outside of the Cowboys fans. And I thought all of them were just kind of funny depending on your type of humor.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's hilarious that I think wasn't it a week or two ago, we were talking about the excitement of Caitlin Clark and the LSU basketball player, and we're sitting there like, oh shit, Caitlin Clark's back in the news. Oh, it's that. I was like, oh damn.
Yeah. Well, when you saw the main one, like the ESPN view of it or whatever, it was like, oh dang, she kind of got rocked. And then like you watch the other ones and you're like, bro, just move out of the way. Like you're an athlete. Like move to the left or the right. Like
do a little shimmer. Like
yeah, she acted like she got, was on that what's the old thing they used to do on ESPN when someone got rocked on the it's like, it looked like that from one angle, and then the other angle, it's like, dude, like just, get out of the way.
Yeah. And with Chuck Schumer, I mean, with something related to Chuck Schumer, I'll put it on my DB list because I saw something that it's related to climate change and their new, they originally went after gas stoves or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Well, now they're going after coffee. I don't know if you saw that. That says that coffee releases CO2 or some type of toxin in the coffee. And I'm like, no, come on.
Yeah.
We can't do this. I mean, I survive on Zins and coffee throughout the workday. You can't take away. I mean, you can have the coffee, sure, but don't take away my Zins. Don't tread on my Zins,
Yeah. Oh, dude. Yeah. It's like the whole argument that, the methane gas produced from, cows shitting and whatnot was like destroying the ozone. It's like, oh yeah, that's it. That's the 0.00001 of the ozone being destroyed due to, a major agricultural producer. And it's like, come on now, like, don't you have better things like like actually saving the world? Like,
a verified source told me that the reason that there were 1 billion cops that showed up to the Miami Mall was because the 25 teenage young American males all farted at the same time, releasing toxic CO2 toxins across the city of Miami, and it was a statewide incident.
And the red button was hit.
Yeah. Like, oh shit. Exactly. Oh my god.
Yeah, what hilarious. A joke.
What a joke. That's a good DB list. All right. Yes, we do have a Tracking the Boys segment. Yes, we are still Cowboys fans. Despite the Rangers and Stars jerseys, we rep the brand still, unfortunately. But yeah, we wanted to talk about a couple of topics that are, as soon as basically we recorded our last week's episode, Mike McCarthy was announced that he was going to return as the Dallas Cowboys head coach. And there are some rumors that, Dan Quinn, he's been having interviews with 6 or 7 different teams, and that he's going back for his second interview with 3 NFL teams. He spent the last 3 or 4 seasons with the Cowboys. And so we kind of want to look ahead, way too early type of deal with these Dan Quinn interest from these 3 teams, with getting his second interviews and Mike McCarthy returning. We initially saw some reports saying that they were both going to return. And I think on this podcast in particular, we're kind of looking to see Dan Quinn depart from Dallas. And it's not to say that he is the worst coordinator in the world and that, it's not as bad as like your Kellen Moore scenario here. But, at the same time, me personally, this defense and offense have hand in hand struggled against good teams for the past 3 years. And it's something Cowboys fans, analysts across, whether you're a Cowboys analyst or whether you're an NFL analyst, they can't quite put their finger on it. They're like, okay, well, Dallas destroys these average to bad teams by 30 points, 40 points, whatever, just roasting these guys. And like we came out against the New York Giants week 1, dropping a 40 bomb on their heads. And people are saying, wow, this defense is incredible. And then you go against good teams like the 49ers, or you get crumbled by the Cardinals somehow. And then you go against the Bills and get crumbled. And you go against the Packers, the 7th seed in the playoffs, and get crumbled. And no one can seem to put a finger on what the issue is. But, like I said, it goes hand in hand to where when Dan Quinn's defense struggles against good teams, it seems that the offense, not as much as the defense does not show up either. And I think that is a pure reflection on the entire coaching staff in general, which is why we've kind of had our expectations set for 2024 with Mike McCarthy returning. And Mike McCarthy is not a bad coach. And no coach in recent memory has been able to escape that we are the most penalized team. I think that's a very suspicious one, that after all these years, we're always, always, always going to be the most penalized team in the NFL. And that just comes with being, I'm not trying to victimize the Dallas Cowboys here, but the stats don't lie in that category. And, it just, when a good team plays against this defense, you're seeing, an undisciplinary defense. You're seeing offsides. You're seeing holding on the interior D line. You're seeing just complete collapse like we saw in the Packers game, and wondering what the hell. And so I'm curious, with McCarthy returning, do you think that Dan Quinn's going to return as well? Do you think it's a good idea that he leaves? Could you possibly see a better replacement, or I don't know, like a rainbow on the other side of the forest here if we were to lose a guy like Dan Quinn and retain Mike McCarthy simultaneously? I guess looking ahead here, what do you kind of see, the Cowboys doing?
Yeah, well, obviously Mike McCarthy returning is kind of like I don't know if you want to say like a good or bad thing. It's kind of like, meh, whatever.
Right.
But the one thing I can take away is, if you've looked at Mike McCarthy and his offense, is that it has gotten better. It's improved. Like he's said, oh, we're going to cut down on the interceptions, and Dak Prescott's got to be a better quarterback and be more in the rhythm. That was true this year. And where on the other hand, the Dallas Cowboys defense, kind of regressed a lot. And yes, you could talk about Dan Quinn, maybe not being as good this year and whatnot. And I'm not trying to give him an excuse, but losing Trayvon Diggs at the beginning of the year really, really, really hurt you, because then like we've talked about, you got to move people to number one, where Deron Bland has shown that he's really good in slot coverage, and then you're mix matching. You had Hankins get hurt. You had Osa get hurt a little bit. You had Van Der Esch, good or bad, get hurt. He at least is the play caller on there. And so, you can say how he didn't do as well, but at the same time, I think you still have to look at the higher up. And so when you see hey, we've got some injuries going on, we've got this, and this, and you can kind of see the writing on the wall, especially in those last 6 weeks, where it was like, hey man, we need some linebackers. And for us to not make a move and get rid of our other linebackers to open up space for a third string tackle and a running back and stuff, that's where, you could take a little bit off of them, because they can't go and sign people. The GMs and all that have to sign people. They put the rosters together.
Right.
We say what we want to say, but if you don't have the pieces there, you just have to make do with what you have to make do. And so I don't think Dan Quinn, like you said, is a bad coordinator. He's had really good teams. He's had, really good defenses. And I don't know, just with how it's looking, I think he's going to go somewhere else, just because I think he's got the resume. He's got the backing of the locker room. It seems like the locker room likes him a lot. And I think that actually goes a long way. And so, if you look at it, he's got, 3 years of a dude having, 13 plus sacks. He's got, 3 years of two different dudes having almost double-digit takeaways. And so it's he does have some good things. Personally, I'd like to see him go somewhere else and us go a different direction, just because of how, like you said, us playing good teams and just absolutely folding in it. It just kind of got old. And I'd hate to be like that, but if it's kind of like the chaos theory or what the insanity theory, thinking the same thing, thinking something's going to happen with the same process. And it's you just want to see something hopefully better and different. And at the same time, I do trust Mike McCarthy in bringing in someone that can do a good job, because when he gets to pick who he wants to pick, good things normally work out. And
Yeah.
so that's just where I think we're going with it from the defensive aspect.
Yeah, and in the locker room, Micah Parsons has voiced out his opinions on, that he wants Dan Quinn to stay. And losing a guy like your best asset at cornerback, Trayvon Diggs, going out, the All-Pro cornerback, and then you've got your bulkiest linebacker to exit, like he mentioned. And there were complaints in the Packers game and in games that we got crumbled that hey, where are these? We're putting 205-pound linebackers in there on goal line stops in the red zone. And you're probably wondering, okay, well, where are our linebackers? Well, the only one I can ever recall being an actual linebacker was Damon Clark, who is still in his growing phases in terms of progressing as an NFL, linebacker. And of course, you had Overshown get injured in the preseason, who everybody was very, very excited about. And I spoke highly of him on this podcast, and Cowboys fans are really looking to get integrated into this defense, whoever's coordinating it, in the following year. And unfortunately, I don't think Leighton Vander Esch is going to be able to return. But, if it were me, in terms of Dan Quinn departing, it would be best for the locker room if it was on Dan Quinn's own terms and that he wasn't shoved out the door. Now, if he decided, I'm like last year, we said, okay, he knows that he is best as a defensive coordinator. And he knows that the head coaching thing is kind of a thing of the past, and that his most successes honestly come from outside of 1 year with the Atlanta Falcons with the MVP Matt Ryan that year. Outside of that year, he kind of struggled as the head coach. And so I think he's in a spot to where he made a promise to the franchise and to the players that he was going to win them a championship. And my gut says that he's going to stay. My gut is that he's going to stay. We're going to, keep our key players in like Parsons. Bland's going to go back to being that slot corner, which if you look at it from a positive aspect, Deron Bland got plenty of work this year on the outside, which is really good in case, shit goes wrong again. And he had 9 interceptions or so, to complement that. So when you're looking at it from that point of view, if you want to look at it from a positive outlook, with him returning, you still got those key pieces that have been under Dan Quinn's system for that long, and you're going to repatch at linebacker. But this goes back, like the head coaches, they can't, especially with Jerry Jones' system, they can't go out and sign players. They can't say, I want this guy, go get him, because the front office of Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones and those kind of guys they think they're the GM of the football team, which is just not the case. That's why Will McClay, our player personnel director, is getting interviews for being a GM, because he's been, majoritively responsible for drafting these guys that we have. And it's a constant thing of goes back to that old adage we always say, is that we like our guys, and we don't like that terminology. If there is something better out there, the other teams, your competition, are going out and they're getting these guys, and we're jealous of guys like, I know Howie Roseman's getting a lot of heat this year in Philadelphia, but shit, dude, he went out and replaced everything that he lost and upgraded at those positions. And so with McCarthy returning, you kind of know what you're getting. You're getting a winning regular season football program that's probably going to be, able to win the division, at least be in contention to do it. Your issue here is good teams, which are playoff teams, and we'll see, what can happen there, I guess, in the future with that.
And to touch on the linebacker thing is like when you look at that front seven, and like you say, it's an old adage about that is like, you got to have size there. And, I think a biggest thing is like those injuries up front to like Hankins and Osa, plus the decline in weight of Mozzie Smith, like that affects those linebackers too. And so like when you've already got a depleted front, and then you're asking, Damon Clark is obviously of size, but like your other linebackers who were 215 pounds tops, like to go and make those plays and fill a hole and stack the line. It's just not going to happen. Like, and
you're
we
asking
could
too much.
talk, and you could talk to the analysts, like being an offensive lineman once he got into college. Like, I'm sure, like, obviously he probably wasn't the biggest O lineman, but if at one point he was a pretty burly dude, especially in college when they made him put on weight, I'm sure he was licking his chops when he had to get to the second level and saw somebody that was 6 foot,
Yeah.
205 instead of 6'2" and 245. Like,
Right.
It's just, the law of inertia there. And so, the law of inertia and everything. And so that's where I still think it falls back on the front office a little bit, is like, you went in with that. And then obviously it looks like they made a plan for Mozzie Smith to lose a little weight, because you don't just lose 30 pounds without a plan.
Exactly.
And I think it kind of set that defense up for failure a little bit right there. And so, yes, the scheme sometimes didn't work, and that's on the coach. Like, obviously, we've talked about, like, why are we not rushing Micah Parsons on a 3rd and 9? Why are we dropping him back in coverage? What are we doing here? Like, yada, yada. But at the same time, they weren't set up with success very well. And the point you make about, like, going out and getting product, right? If, like, the 49ers went out and got Chase Young, like, they didn't need him, but what if they did? And so I think that's kind of the thing, is like, if we would have went and got a couple of big names or some key pieces and would have made it further in the playoffs, no one would complain and be like, well, why did we get this guy that helped? Like, nobody's going to sit there and complain about that. I mean, it's kind of the point I make with, like, Major League Baseball. Like, yes, there's a salary cap, but there's not really. Props to the Rangers. Like, go out and get some dudes, spend money, and if you win a ship, no one cares.
Right.
Like, just pay the fine next year. You got a ship. Like, so that's just kind of my point right there. Is like, I think it's more blame on the top.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And that's been a reoccurring issue for
years,
multiple decades, approaching 3 decades now. And it's something that Cowboys fans can't do anything about, and analysts can't explain. And so, the atrocity is that I've heard a couple times from Jerry Jones is that this is working. Is that I've heard him say that exact phrase where it's like, we have the recipe for a championship, and I'm like, what evidence makes you believe that? You've had the best roster that Cowboys fans have seen since Troy Aikman and Michael Irvin and Emmitt Smith the last 3 years, and have not accomplished even an NFC championship. It's failure. And it unfortunately goes back on your 2 faces of the team. And that's Mike McCarthy and Dak Prescott. And which kind of leads us into Dak Prescott with the contract issue that we have here. I mean, you sent a great post on Twitter in our group chat talking about, the salary cap issues with Dak Prescott, and that there's a lot that, Dallas going to figure out, but that this is kind of a repeat of what happened with Tony Romo when we extended him and he played 5 games in 2 years, which led into magically running up on Dak Prescott, who we got lucky with in the draft, who became our franchise quarterback. But, that isn't a guarantee almost ever. It's something that we consider a miracle. And so now we're here again. We're stuck with that, large salary cap hit that Romo had, but thankfully we had a rookie quarterback on a 4th round deal in 3 years to make sure that he was the guy, and almost not pay him on a franchise tag when he snaps his ankle. And now we're here, in hindsight's 2020. History always repeats itself. And so I was kind of go into that different document or whatever that we have with, the cap, but
I kind of have it paraphrased.
Perfect. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. I was going to pull it up, but I was stumbling on Twitter, but go ahead.
Yeah. So with the Dak Prescott situation, so he's going into his final year of his contract. Yeah. And so basically he's owed $60 million or whatever this year. And so you have 3 options essentially, because there's 17 different options, but there's 3 ones you would actually look at, and it's cut Dak Prescott, which obviously you don't want to do. Okay. Because, and like I was trying to say to Hunter and whatnot, like, it's not just 1 year, because what he has in his contract is called void years. So what void years are made up years, essentially, if you get cut or something like that happens. And so it could get spread out. And so what that means is, say, if you cut him and it's a $60 million cap hit and he has the 2 to 3 years of void years hit on that, that means you're still paying for him for a few years. And so it's not just 1 year. And with $60 million, it'll probably get spread out 2 to 3 years. We can do the math there. And so you're not just sitting there and just taking this hit for 1 year and sucking for a year, and then you're all good and dandy the next year. And kind of the point I was trying to make is that, like, if you take that $60 million and hit, and it's the same thing like what happened this past year with Zeke, right? You know, you get stuck with $13 million on the book. That's $13 million you can't pay somewhere else. And so there's that. And so that would probably be the least likely one, I would assume. The second one is if you trade, okay? And the reason with trading him on this last year of his contract is there's no way to go, but you have to trade and get extreme value for him, and either hope to God they pick up some of his contract. So best example was when the Astros traded for Justin Verlander this year. Okay, the biggest thing with there is that the Mets picked up a little over a third of his contract, and so you're only getting hit with 22 million instead of 40 million or whatever. And so that's the biggest thing is you'd have to trade. And in the NFL, you can trade draft picks and whatnot, but you'd have to get extreme capital because he's coming off an MVP year. And so you'd have to, I mean, it would be, he's got more value than Russell Wilson right now. Don't care what you say. When Russell Wilson got traded, he got a haul brought back for him. And so that you would have to get something plus more with that. And so that's the thing is if you did that, you'd be basically saying we're going to try to go the Brock Purdy route. And you'd have to basically suck for a year, or you'd get so much in return that's like, hey, we just got to put our eggs in a basket with Cooper Rush and Trey Lance. Don't think that's the best basket, especially with how our front office and stuff goes and whatnot like that. So I would assume they wouldn't do that. The most likely one to me, and the one that makes sense to me, is you got to extend him. And I'm going to say you'd have to extend him somewhere from 3 to 5 years. Okay. And right now it's going to look like a lot, but if you could get him to settle on a number somewhere between 50 and 56, that's going to be the best, because the next deal that's about to hit with Josh Allen and all the other quarterbacks coming up, like, you're gonna that's gonna look cheap, similar when the Chiefs paid Mahomes. Yeah, and so that's gonna look cheap and whatnot. With doing that opens up some cap space, and what you would do there is then you'd have to go and extend your other players, and obviously the big three players we'd look at is Dak, CD, and Micah, right?
Yes.
And so because we've already got Diggs and whatnot, so extending him then allows you to then restructure, put some money on the back end, put it into a signing bonus, and then make it to where you can actually, pay for things. But at the same time, if, you do for a 3-year to a 4-year extension, you get to that point and you're like, hey, this isn't working. Like, then boom, you're out.
Right.
And if you go through, and like we talked about on the last pod, if you go through try to do the other two choices, which I think are highly unlikely, you got to be ready for for us to be sitting here at 3 and 14, or at best 5 and 12, sitting here talking about the Cowboys and what we do next and who we draft and whatnot. So those are kind of the 3 ways you can go with that. And like I've said before, Dallas put themselves in this situation just like they did it in the first contract, just like they did it with Tony Romo. And that's what I've said for a while now, is that history repeats itself. And, the front office is not learning. They're not looking back and being like, well, maybe we need to get ahead of this and whatnot. And so, we had the chance to extend Dak at the beginning of the season and, maybe get him at $50 million a year, and then it's cheap. But instead, we're probably going to pay him somewhere between 55 and 60, and it's going to look like a lot. Right. However, in this day and age, that's where the majority of your cap hit's going to go, is the quarterback, because that's the one that really does anything, unless you're the 49ers, really. So, there's a lot of information, but that was kind of paraphrased instead of a 10-page, whatever it was, over the cap article and whatnot.
Yeah. And I think it's ironic because, like you said, they're not learning. And it's ironic because if you took the route of trading or cutting Dak Prescott and taking on that capital, that dead space money like we did with Zeke, but on a much larger scale, you're sitting there going, shit, we're wasting these great players' careers. We're wasting Lamb, Parsons, Tyler Smith, the rest of Zach Martin's, professional life. And then on the flip side of it, if you did extend Dak, if you did extend Dak, you're still sitting there going, well, the years leading up to this, we're wasting careers because we didn't attack in the offseason. We didn't learn from our lessons with, Romo and Ezekiel Elliott. And, and that's what I'm trying to get these, Cowboys Twitter fans to understand as best I can with the 200 followers that I got, is basically saying you want to go out and you want to get these Derrick Henrys and you want to sign these, mega players. All those players that have been in the league, guess what? When you sign them, they're not looking for some cash sale discount. They're looking to get their money because they're, especially for a running back, their lives are short in the NFL these days. Derrick Henry is one of the lucky ones that has made it to 29, 30 years old. Another guy would be Aaron Jones. But, and just in these scenarios, you look at it, we talked about it with the coaching. We talked about it with Dak's contract. It all kind of leads back to the front office once again. And it's kind of like, it's just never ending not learning your lessons. And so, and I agree. If you're going to be the Dallas Cowboys and you have these, pivotal players like Diggs, like Parsons, like Lamb, like Dak, yes, there are some contracts that might be more valuable than Dak currently with his playoff record, that if you want to pin all of those losses on him. But you're as close as you can get to a championship if you re-sign Dak and extend him and develop a quarterback, whether it be Trey Lance, whether it be a guy in the first, second, or third round of the next two drafts, whatever that be. That's, in my opinion, is the best path to success. Now, Dallas Cowboys fans all over the globe will be split like a civil war defending Dak Prescott's neck or absolutely bashing Dak Prescott, which, as you know, with season 2 of the TRAK podcast, me and the kid are probably going to go after it about this. Adamantly. So, and that's very exciting because you get to see two different sides of the pie. Great points there. And the over the cap article, fantastic job by that guy, really explain, because money's tough to figure out, money moves. And it's a business at the end of the day, like we all say, and a business ain't easy to run. And I'll cut him some credit with that. But
and the biggest thing with me, and I'm sure a lot of Cowboys fans think this, and where I guess I kind of agree with Hunter, is like, you've got to choose a side. You've either got to go all in and go with Dak, or you've got to go all in and say like, hey, we're getting rid of him and we're going a direction, and it may not work out, but we're going to go steamroll head first that way. And that's the problem with the front office, is that they're going to try to go in the middle and it's not going to work.
Right.
And so that's where I kind of agree with Hunter. Like, if you want to go that way, go that way. But go that way. Like, don't veer. Go that way and see what happens. And so and honestly, that's the frustrating part, is that they're not going to do that. They're going to screw it up. So see how much confidence I have in that. So
yes, because we've seen it over and over and over again. And it's infuriating when you have something that you can commit to two things, and you're at a crossroads where it's like, but both roads could be great, and you would never know unless you fully committed to either road. And you sit there and you go, I think I'm going to go off the road. And
we're going to go down the slough right down the middle, like at Giles Dearlease and Dieball. We're going to be like, hey, we could go around and go this way, or around and go that way and be all right. It'd be like, no, we're going to go through the slough that might have a 12-foot drop off in there and die. Right. Like, we're going to go that way.
Yeah, there's a road to the right that's been there for years, but there's some trees we got to trim, but we can't really see the full road, but there's a road. And then on the left, there's the clear path where it's like, well, we know what we're getting when we go down this road. And if we take this road, we know what we can commit to and how to fix that problem. Or there's the slough where there's alligator guard, there's water moccasins, boa constrictors, there's pigs, and you never know what's going to jump up on you.
Chupacabra, and you're just
cougars. I mean, you never even know. Local MILFs in your area. You never know what's going to happen.
Okay, Jason Whitlock.
Yeah.
Oh man,
exactly. All right, well, that wraps up Dallas Cowboys talk. That's your Tracking with the Boys segment there.
Thank God.
Yeah, good Lord. Well, let's get into the exciting stuff. The divisional round.
The actual winners.
Recap. Yeah, the actual winners of the NFL. Which we're going to start on the NFC side here. The number 3 seeded Lions defeat the number 4 seeded Bucs 31-23. Now, on this game, honestly, I was sitting at home, with the full family crew, and I said in the previous podcast that, and we all did, that this game is going to be a lot closer than people anticipated. And it was for the majority of the game and to the end, honestly. And Baker had an opportunity to go win this game and multiple times. And he started the game off with that tip pick interception that was handed back to Baker by CJ Gardner-Johnson. He was doing some trash talking before the game. But, Baker played great. I really did think that the way that he went out there, he had this mojo about him. He didn't play to lose. He was playing the game as if it was on a prove it year, like we mentioned before. But I said last week that I think the Lions were going to win because if the Buccaneers did not get that early lead and contain it, that's where Baker plays his best ball. It is not a bad thing to say that Baker is the game manager. That game management system is what broke the curse for the Browns and what makes them, relevant these days. And so what happened was the Lions got ahead of score, and then it became 2 scores, and it was just at that point it's just too much on Baker's shoulders to handle, despite his 2 interceptions. But boy, Baker was electric all game. Mike Evans was an animal all postseason, all regular season long. Once again, he's going to earn himself a contract somewhere else. I don't think he would return to the Bucs, which could hurt Baker and that decision to re-sign Baker. But I think Baker has found a home in Tampa Bay, and the pieces you need to get around him to have a recipe for success. So I don't want to take anything away from Baker. I thought he played up to standards in this game. And so I'll kind of let you touch a little bit on, a little bit of the Bucs side and the Lions side as well. And I'll finish it off with some more analysis.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm over here working my other monitor, and this is a game changer right now. Cause I have I'm not having a split screen. So I got it all. I got all the stats and whatnot, but what I had written down is the Lions offense was just on full display. I thought they did a really good job of, really getting everybody involved. I mean, nobody had just an absolute, there wasn't a Mike Evans where he went 8 for 147. I mean, Amon St. Brown had 8 for 77, Laporte 9 for 65. Everybody contributed. Jahmyr Gibbs had 9 for 74. And I mean, that's a really good game and whatnot. But they really spread the ball around and never let you know, it seemed like they never let you know, who was getting the ball or who was going to dominate this game. And I thought that's the Lions offense at its best, is when everybody is turning up basically. And so I thought they did a really good job. I thought, and I think that works well with that coaching style with Dan Quinn. It's very aggressive, very risk-taking, stuff like that. And I think that places their hand with all the good playmakers they have and whatnot. But I thought that offense did really well. Jared Goff had a pretty good game and whatnot. I thought how you talk about Baker plays was kind of that chip on his shoulder, playing to win, not playing to not lose. On the contrary, I think his coach gets way too conservative at the worst times. And that's been kind of Todd Bowles' MO, is that he can get very conservative. And I thought he kind of did that towards the end of the game, especially when they were down a little bit. Just some of the plays they called were not going for it on some of those 4th downs. I thought with the Lions offense, how they got rolling in that second half, I was like, man, you got to start at some point. You got to start hey, unless you're, within year 30, on your side, you got to start going for it on 4th down. It's got to be 4th down play calls ready to go and stuff like that. And I thought that kind of, took them out of the game a little bit, kind of got them off rhythm. And, making those 4th downs are really a momentum changer and stuff like that. I have on here Mike Evans as a dog. Like you said, he's got to get a contract somewhere. I know I can't remember if it was Baker Mayfield says he wants to come back to the Bucs as long as Mike Evans is there, or vice versa. But I thought that was cool to hear, and I think they could still be really good. Obviously Evans is just, I mean, just
dog.
some of those passes were just like, yeah, F it, Evans is down there somewhere, and like, I mean, he made every play. I know he had a couple of drops, but like, it was still like, he was. It just seems like he hasn't dropped off at all. And
Yeah,
like
not
after
at all.
10 years, you start to see something, but like no drop off. And then I thought the injuries to the Bucs defense kind of got at them. They had a couple of injuries. I know Ryan mentioned it with that one cornerback. Was that game where he was at Sam Houston with Ryan?
I
Was
know
that
Zion
game?
McCollum had to fill in. He's from Sam Houston, but I can't
Yeah.
remember. I can't recall the name of the starting cornerback. I think that departed the game.
Yeah, but I was just saying, like, he got in the game and is one of their starting guys that got dinged up, and then there was another guy that got dinged up that's one of their dudes, and he got dinged up, and it really took a toll on them and whatnot. And so I think I kind of got the best of them there in the second half. But it was a great game to watch, fun game to watch, and whatnot. So just props to both teams. I mean, both played really well. Both honestly deserved the win, but the Lions were the better team. They had more weapons, and their defense, with how bad they've been, they were good when they needed to be good.
Yeah, exactly. And the last thing I'll say on the Lions and was, you said, like, we're going to get all these players the ball. You never knew who was going to get the ball in these scenarios. It was evenly split. That's a good credit to Ben Johnson. And then towards the end of the game, when they went for it on fourth down to get Craig Reynolds into the end zone, I was sitting there saying, Dan Campbell, don't change now. You got here by going for it and being aggressive on fourth down all year long, and that you had a pair of nuts on you. Don't change now. This is what got you to where you're at. And so they went for it on fourth down. So credit to Dan Campbell for not changing, no matter the longevity. I guess what's the name? The moment, the big moment that you're in, you didn't change one bit. You
didn't change your philosophy at all. You just you went for it. I just thought it was crazy. He went with Craig Reynolds. Like, I was like, dude, because that doesn't work. And everybody is like, where's Gibbs? Where's Montgomery? Like, and like, so for him to do that, like, one of those times where it's like, oh, let's see if we can be like outsmart, like reverse psychology thing. And it worked. And so, I mean, like you said, his philosophy is to be the aggressor, and it worked out.
Yeah, exactly. So congrats to the Lions for breaking yet another curse. Okay. The number 1 seed 49ers take on the Packers and defeat them 24-21. Now, I have in this game that, I think the weather had a pretty big effect on certain players and the game itself, especially late. Brock Purdy was missing some gimme throws, and that could have been due to the weather, or that could have been the yips, either one. But, I think in pivotal moments of this game, whether it be the 49ers driving to gain some momentum, or at the end on Jordan Love's final drive, the monsoon just happened to just show up, which was just horrible timing, right on their final drive.
NFL scripted.
Yeah, NFL scripted. The movie Geostorm is real. And so Purdy didn't look great, but he did enough to advance, obviously past the Packers, and who are a scrappy team, who the 49ers and Packers have playoff history against one another in the past. And so, again, Carlson's field goal for the Green Bay Packers was extremely costly. They would have gone into probably overtime tied, or at least the Packers would have approached their final drive differently, because they were moving the ball, and not in a way that would win you the game, but in a way that, there was some hope there until, Jordan Love rolls out, and on 1st and 10 or 2nd and 10, whatever it was, just chunks it like Brett Favre into triple coverage over the middle, which was completely unnecessary. And
that was so bad.
And it just, it was terrible. You ruined a great game and great story that you were having, and you made the Cowboys look a little bit worse. I'm just kidding. But I mean, Packers had control of this game for the majority. And it was looking like if Daniel Carlson made that field goal, or that the Packers even made that touchdown on that same drive, that the Packers were going to run away from this thing. And we had 49ers fans saying that it was over and that it was done, it was toast, and that we're going to laugh at ourselves at this one. And I can't believe we're going to let this youngest roster in the NFL advance. But at the end of the day, the 49ers were the better team, and they entered the championship as the better team. So, just props to the 49ers for sticking at it. And one thing I noticed in this game was that they never broke their script. They stuck to their guns, and they said, we know McCaffrey works. We know that, even with the loss of Debo, that Kittle is our force to be reckoned with, along with Ayuk, and that our defense, we can lean on them to make a stop. Wouldn't you believe it? But so the 49ers end up cutting by this game.
Yeah, and so I kind of have a lot of the same talking points as you. Kind of a funny point, but I have like Sam Darnold time is inevitable. I think every time like Brock Purdy like does bad, I feel like Shanahan's probably like, hey, Sam, go get start rolling up, man.
Go get Darnold.
But I do think his time it's inevitable, and that when it comes to contract time, if they still got Darnold on like a cheap ass deal, like it's gonna be like, yeah, we'll let Purdy walk and then get Darnold in here. But not to take away from Brock Purdy, he's been very good this year, and like you said, he did enough to win in this game. And I mean, he was off. Obviously, it could have been because of rest, it could have been because of weather, whatever it was, but he was definitely off. Second point I have is like, what the hell was Love doing on that last drive? I've tried to look at every different like angle and be like, oh, well, there was no reason to throw that ball. Like there was not a receiver very close. There was 3 to 5 defenders that could have made a play on the ball. And like you said, 2nd and 10, 1st and 10, whatever it was, 2 timeouts left, almost a minute left in the game. And like all that, and there was room to run or dump it off to Aaron Jones or something right there besides do that throw. Like literally just don't do that and you were fine. Or at least give yourself a chance. And so that was very weird and seemed very uncharacteristic because the last 7 weeks, like he hadn't done that. Then third point is maybe Debo is the key to that offense because it seems like whenever he goes down, the offense really struggles.
Yes.
And so it's just funny that like he's a very good gadget player. He can be a good receiver. He can be a very good running back. He can be a good athlete on the field and whatnot. And I know Ryan kind of dogs him about being a receiver, but it's like when he goes down, that offense struggles a lot. And so it's just funny seeing that and seeing how that always works out. Then my last point is, like you said, Christian McCaffrey is a dog. And, like you said, not breaking the script and whatnot. I mean, dude is just super good. And like when they got in, and that's kind of my point to the Sam Darnold thing is like when they got in trouble, like that's who they fell back on. And that's who they trusted to like, hey, let's make a play here. And so, he could probably get more recognition in the MVP just of how good he is and whatnot. But like that one run was just like, man, he's good. Like he's just good. And I mean, in the game, he had 7 catches, 12 targets, plus 17 carries. So in total, he could have got the ball 29 times. And like, that's more than even close to anybody else. Kittle, Ayuk, anybody even came close to getting the ball. And so it just shows that like him and Debo seem to be that motor that gets that going. And so it's just kind of funny to see, but props to them. They got a lot of good weapons, and they did enough to win that game. And, props to the Packers because they weren't expected to do any of that. And, like you said, they had every chance to, knock that game out of reach and then win that game. And they're just, the Packers got Packered. And and lost on just a heartbreaking last drive or last couple of drives.
Yeah, as Kittle said on the Pat McAfee show, "Go Pack, go the hell home," which is pretty tragic. But I thought it was pretty funny about a report came out shortly after the game. This is from JPA Football saying that the 49ers tried getting Tom Brady out of retirement to be their starter this season, and even told Brock Purdy that he would be the backup for the year if they got Brady. This is per ESPN on JPA's account. Said early in the offseason, quote, early in the offseason, Niners coach Kyle Shanahan sat down with Purdy and assured him that if he was healthy, he would be the starter unless Brady wanted to play one more season for his hometown Niners, which is
that's nuts.
that kind of goes hand in hand with what you said about Purdy too. And I don't want to dog on him too much because he's had a good year, but I mean, I've said it all year as well, is that the catalyst of the offense, like you mentioned, is McCaffrey.
Yeah.
And so, if Debo's gone, you might have a point. But okay, AFC matchups. Let's start with the Ravens and Texans first, and then I want to finish with the Bills and Chiefs because I think that was a much more exciting game. There's not the Ravens number 1 seeded defeating the Texans, the number 4 seed, 34-10. They went into this game tied at 10, and momentum was kind of swinging towards Houston's side. But ironically, the Texans never scored an offensive touchdown. Slovic and Stroud and their offense was struggling against, in my opinion, the number 1 defense in the league.
Oh yeah,
kind of by a landslide, because if you look at what they did to playoff teams and good teams, I mean, they destroyed them, and they blew out the Lions. They blew out the 49ers. I'm pretty sure there's a couple more teams in there that I need to list as well. But you go down the list, you're like, damn, like this defense is holding them under 20 points per game against some of these teams. So, absolute credit to the Baltimore defense. But I mean, we thought this high-flying Texans offense, I thought it was going to be a lot more close in the second half, especially leading up into it. But, that offense just couldn't get shit going. And I know Slovic was a head coaching candidate, but, I think he might need another 1 or 2 years, especially with the system that seemed to have, absolutely exploded expectations this year, or overachieved expectations this year with Stroud on the Texans. You're going to get Rookie of the Year probably with CJ Stroud. You won a playoff game. You won your division. That's a recipe for success that I think you keep closely. But I mean, what do you have on this game? I'll pitch in on the Baltimore Ravens as well.
Yeah, for the game, I mean, the Ravens just seemed like the better team. It did seem, like you said, that defense is very good and did a very good job of, basically keeping them in the game until Lamar and all the offense could get going. And then, like I mentioned on the last pod, I think the biggest thing for the Texans' success was that their supplemental weapons show up and not just Nico. And in this game, they shut down Nico. And their next leading receiver outside of Nico Collins was the running back, Devin Singletary. And there were a couple drops from Dalton Schultz. Robert Woods wasn't very involved in the game. Brevin Jordan was I know he had a big touchdown, not this past week, but the week before and whatnot. And so, I mean, kind of like I said, I think if Tank Dell is in this game, I think it's a much different game. But they just ran out of offensive options. And, you can knock Slovic and whatnot, but I just think like man for man defense against that offense, the Ravens just had more dudes on that defense and whatnot. And they took Nico basically out of the game, and that was kind of it. And whatnot. But I have, that defense is just really good. And, to touch on, defense obviously, but the offense, and props to Lamar Jackson. And what I've had for a few weeks now talking about Lamar Jackson is that right now he's doing whatever it takes to win, whether it be sling it around the yard, if that's there, he's doing that. Whether if it be like this game where it was a lot of mix and match, he ran it 11 times for 100 yards. We kind of saw like old school Lamar Jackson, who is just like, you're just like, how do you stop this dude? Right. And then, when that run wasn't there, he was able to throw it. Now he only threw for 152 yards, but like I said, he took what, was there to win the game and keep them ahead and keep the offense going rather than forcing something. And so he was taking whatever positive play he could get. And so I think that's props to Lamar on that, because that's shown where he's grown throughout his career, is that he's kind of just doing whatever he can. It doesn't have to be a light up the scoreboard. It doesn't have to be this or that. It's just like, hey, win the game, score touchdowns. And, their best player made the most plays, and that props that team. They're a really good team, both sides.
Yeah. And that goes to the something about stats that we like to say that the stats don't tell the whole story. And the average Joe, your Joe Schmo, will look at that box score and go, well, Lamar only had 152 yards passing, whereas your analyst would say, yeah, but he had no turnovers and he found a way to win the game. And like you said, mix and matched throughout the entirety of the game and the season. He did whatever he had to do to win the game. So yeah, props to the MVP to be Lamar Jackson. Okay. Your last game in the AFC, the Bills hosting the Chiefs in another smackdown of Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, but the Bills fall short 27-24 to the Chiefs. And I will say, I saw this great post on Twitter, and it said the Bills had 0 turnovers. They dominated time of possession it had over 35 plus minutes of possession time, less than 30 penalty yards, and they rushed and passed for 150 plus yards each. And they still lost this game. And it's just brutal. Everything kind of about this game has been brutal. You're hosting your arch nemesis who you haven't been able to beat the playoffs yet at home, in your weather, in your home state, where you feel most comfortable. And it didn't work out. And not to say that Josh Allen didn't do his job. And yeah, we talked about it at the beginning of the podcast, taking that home run shot instead of maybe that underneath drag route to Stephon Diggs on 2nd and 9 late in the game. But that is not the only play that showed the effort and the ability of Josh Allen in this game, because he had 3 or 4 throws that could have changed the game completely. And one of them we talked about and said, damn, we really wish we could just see Josh Allen throw this ball about 70 yards and just see what happens. And I think it was 5 to 10 minutes after we said that, this dude took a hitch step and chunked it 65 air yards to Stephon Diggs. Perfect ball right in the breadbasket, dropped. And you're sitting there going, you just can't do that. Like in that moment, you can't, because then at the end, what are we doing now? We're pinning it back on the quarterback. And that is just that's not at all how it needs to be. I get there's an overall consensus that we could pin it on the quarterback to beat the best, like we talked about at the beginning of the podcast. Sure, but Josh Allen did everything he could in his power, to win this game, and he put him in a scenario to tie the game late, and Bass misses the field goal by about 20 yards to the right. And it just, and credit to Josh Allen after the game for going up to Tyler Bass, entering the locker room and, kind of embracing him, making out with him a little bit. Just kidding. But, that they shared a moment, and even in, Josh Allen's toughest loss, as the later you get as a quarterback into your years, the more crucial playoffs become. And so it was a brutal loss, man. I've been seeing a lot of edits of Josh Allen, just brutal moments from that game. And but yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about here with the Patrick Mahomes side too, and as well what else you got on Josh Allen?
Yeah, first point is poor Bills. Bills. They played really well. And like you said, a lot of stuff will get dinged on the quarterback. Now, I will say Josh Allen did have a couple throws where you're like, it's almost like he can't help himself. Like he's got to do it. He's got to just let it eat and just make some wild, or try to make some wild play and whatnot. And, kind of what I said at the beginning of the podcast, I think, that new offensive coordinator over there it's probably just like, keeping him awake at night, just trying to get Josh Allen to be like, hey, can we just rein it in just a tad? Like, I don't want you to like not do that because that's what you're good at, but like just a tad. Like there's just a couple of them that like, you do this instead of try to make this Superman play and like, hey, we're moving and whatnot. But, like you said, just great game by him. Great game by the Buffalo Bills. I didn't think they played very bad at all. I did call that whoever had the best kicker was going to win. I predicted it being a much lower scoring game. But on the Chiefs side, what I have written down is kind of like I talked about last week with the wide receiver or receiving options, is Rice has got to be your number one going forward. And then that's going to help supplement Kelsey's going to supplement that as the number 2. And, at the beginning of the year, if Kelsey's being considered your number 2, you're like, oh my God, well, this offense is something to mess with then. But that's how I think they're going to win, is Rice being established as a number 1. And then that opens Kelsey up for what we saw in the game, more of those after the catch type plays. He's running down the field, wide open because they bit on something underneath. And, that plays their strength. And especially, Patrick Mahomes' escapability, where he can get around and dance around. And then all of a sudden you're like, how the hell is Kelsey, doesn't have anybody around him? Well, because they have an actual wide receiver out there playing wide receiver and whatnot. So I think going forward, if they continue to do that, they're going to be a really good offense. And that to me is what really is going to spark them, is them continuing with that play call and that philosophy. And then my last point is just Mahomes seems to be inevitable. It just seems like, all year, like the offense has been Mahomes' play has been okay. Receivers have been bad, whatever. And in this game, it seems like he was like, all right, guys, playoffs, let's turn it up. And it's just like, I mean, he didn't make any mistakes. And like we talked about, I mean, his stat line's not going to read anything crazy, but like 215 yards, 2 TDs, I mean, that wins a ball game.
Yeah.
Taking 0 sacks. I mean, if you're watching that game, like there were plenty of chances like it could have happened. And him being able to elude all that, it was just like, it's like, dude, like what else can you do? Because the Bills going in were super hot, been playing really well down the stretch, won 7 in a row, won 6 to get into the playoffs, take their top seed and play at home. And then it was just like Mahomes comes in and like little brothers and like pats him on the head, like sits up in his gaming chair, like, all right, time to play. And it's like, and it's just like, it just seemed like Mahomes is always inevitable.
Yep. Same story last year, with a lesser roster, and it got even lesser this year, and we're still going to see him in an AFC Championship game. And then I have one final comment on this game, and it's outside of the game of football and pertains to Tony Romo. The dude just gets too much hate for advocating for these 2 great quarterbacks. I mean, I've seen so much content. I get it. It's probably for clicks and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not defending him as a Dallas Cowboys fan. I'm defending him as a lover of the game and as a guy that could literally be a wizard and predict plays. Tony Romo is a very exciting commentator. I think most of the population would agree on that. And that when Allen and Mahomes are playing in a pivotal game, that you got Tony Romo commentating that game, and he's going to marvel at the fact that a great quarterback is in the game, and you're going to miss them when they're gone and when they're not playing in the NFL anymore. And when you don't get Mahomes in prime time and having somebody go, oh my God, like Mahomes and Allen are just freaks. And so, just props to Tony Romo being up there in the booth. I think he's done a great job. I'm a fan of him and what he did his work, despite whether the fact he actually said the word that one time.
Yes.
Exactly. So, okay.
What word? Oh.
Yeah. Canceled. Okay. TRAK ranking top 3 NFL playoff games in our lifetime. Obviously, start with gold, move on to platinum and some diamond. Of course, if you have an honorable mention, that's allowed. But all right, I'll give you first props. Your gold top 3 NFL playoff game.
Okay, obviously we're doing an honorable mention. That seems to be how it goes. So my honorable mention was 2017 Minnesota Vikings versus New Orleans Saints. Minnesota wins 29-24. It was a game where Case Keenum threw Stephon Diggs, that out route, and the DB, the defensive back for the Saints, missed a tackle. And then the miracle in Minnesota or whatever, and it was like he's sprinting down the field, scores a touchdown, throws his helmet at the fans, like, oh, let's go. And like watching that on TV, you're like, bro, Case Keenum out here doing this, and then like does that. It was like, wow, that's nuts. And I think it was last year. I think Diggs got traded after that year or something like that. It was that, because then they traded Diggs and Minnesota drafted Justin Jefferson. So it was like you have a pivotal moment like that, and then it's like, wow.
All right. Yeah. Prime example of them fully committing to a different route. And damn, if that's your honorable mention, then I might have to step up my game a little bit. Yeah, but my honorable mention was the Saints versus the Rams when the Rams went to the Super Bowl and they had the infamous pass interference that never was.
Yeah.
At late in the game, and the Rams go up to win 26-23, basically just blowing up all hope for Drew Brees getting another Super Bowl. And it was very tragic. I mean, if you think a hurricane wasn't enough in New Orleans, I mean, this one was just, it might have taken the cake. But yeah, it's so blatant. I remember watching it going, what are we looking at? And but it was an exciting game, nonetheless. It was back and forth. It was Goff versus Breeze, and it was Todd Gurley in his prime, Sean McVay when in his upbringing. After they, routed Dallas with CJ Anderson, it was just brutal. But yeah, that's my honorable mention. What's your gold?
Gold is the infamous Seahawks versus the Patriots, where they didn't hand Marshawn Lynch the ball at the 1 yard line.
Yeah.
Obviously, Legion of Boom versus Tom Brady and all that. And, just getting all the way down the field and you're like, we know where this is going. Marshawn, 1 yard, doom. And they run whatever that is. And Malcolm Butler steps in front and picks it off. And it's just like, that's one where if you just say Patriots, Seahawks in the same sentence, you automatically go to that. You go to that moment right there. Like they could have anything happen the 50 years prior or 50 years after that, and you're always going to be like, oh God, you remember that Marshawn Lynch game or that game where they didn't hand Marshawn? Like that's to me is one of the gold ones because that was obviously nail biter and then ended like, what the hell? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's a ring for Brady. Which is what's crazy. Is the Seahawks were going to win that game. All right, yeah, my gold was the 2016 NFC divisional round. This is from the 2015 season leading into 2016, where Aaron Rodgers had the Hail Mary versus Arizona, down 13-20. And, the infamous, he's spinning out, he's already done it before that year, 1 or 2 times already, and just chunks up a prayer to, of all people, who a lot of people will probably forget about this guy's name already. I think his name was Jeff Janis. I know his last name was Janis.
Oh, yeah.
Who goes up in mosses. I believe it was Patrick Peterson for the touchdown. And then just to go into overtime and have Larry Fitzgerald on a crossback throw from Carson Palmer, of all people, to go like 60-plus yards inside the 5, and then a shovel pass to Fitzgerald to finish off the drive and finish off the Packers, sending them home. And that one I just remembered that year being like, good Lord, like Aaron Rodgers, all these Hail Marys, and just that awesome effort only to lose the game. That was just tragic for the Packers, and good for the Cardinals. Entertaining.
Yeah. So my platinum is and this one's a little older, it's 2009. Arizona Cardinals versus Green Bay Packers. Reason being is because this seemed like a Big 12 Baylor versus TCU game or Texas Tech game. The score is 51 Arizona, 45 Green Bay. And it was, if you could think about this, it was Kurt Warner versus Aaron Rodgers, a young Aaron Rodgers. And, this actually, I think, broke the record for most points scored in a, most points scored in a playoff game like ever. I mean, obviously, you're not going to have too many 51-45 games, but Kurt Warner actually threw for 5 TDs and had a 154 passing rating. And just watching that as a kid, you're just like, oh my God, offense. Like, that's where your love for like offense come from. You're like, who cares about defense? Score points. Like,
yeah, more points.
Yeah.
Make a movie about Kurt Warner.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. My platinum is the 2012 AFC wildcard round game, the Broncos versus the Steelers. Tim Tebow launches the worst mechanical throw of all time to Demaryius Thomas for the win. And I think everyone looking back at this game goes, how in the world did Tim Tebow win a playoff game? And I can tell you exactly how he won the playoff game. Through the works of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. That's how. Winning the game 29-23. You go back and watch that throw, and I bet even Tim Tebow would tell you, holy shit, that's atrocious. There are junior high quarterbacks that have a faster release than that throw. And somehow that one just goes to that. It was just a miracle. It was like, oh my God, Jesus is dwelling in this stadium right now. And, him going a knee afterwards and everything, which, also, by the way, RIP to the late passing Demaryius Thomas. That was heartbreaking. He was an outstanding receiver. Dallas was in line to possibly take him, and Des Bryant talked about it on the podcast. That he was going to go originally to the Broncos, and that they took Demaryius instead, and neither one turned out to be a bad decision.
No.
So yeah, hell. You would never see a quarterback like Tim Tebow winning a playoff game.
No, not
incredible. It was like miracle on turf.
Yeah. So since you stole mine just now,
shit.
Yeah, I had Broncos versus Pittsburgh. Tim Tebow, that throw. I'll pick another one, and it's a little more recent, but it's the Patriots versus the Falcons, the 28-3 comeback with Tom Brady, and just sitting there. And we talk about like Patrick Mahomes being inevitable, Tom Brady was the inevitable one before him. And just watching that game, and unfortunately, like, we have that defensive coordinator now, but like, and it's unfortunate because he's a great coach and whatnot, but like him being associated with some of like the worst comebacks of like all time are associated with Dan Quinn. And, just watching that and being like, Matt Ryan's finally going to do it. MVP season. Yeah. He's gone through his struggles and bad teams in Atlanta. They finally got a decent defense. Their offense was insane that year. And, he was very good. I think that year he threw like 40-something touchdowns and like 5,000 yards. Like, just incredible, incredible year. And you were like, they come out and they just shit pump the Patriots in the first half.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, same thing, it's like when Tom Brady gives you that look, like it's about to go down, like, kind of thing. And then just to come back and win that was just like, everybody's watching the Super Bowl and you're just like, yeah, no way they're coming back. And then they score. And it's like, yeah, this ain't going to happen. And then they score and you're like, well, and then they score and then you're like, holy shit, this is about to happen. And so that Super Bowl game was just nuts. And regardless what you want to say about some of Tom Brady's rings, like, to come back from that is just, it's not even like video game like you're not doing that in a video game.
Virtually impossible.
That's one of those where, like, you let your 4-year-old cousin like score 28 and then maybe you come back from that. But to do that was just absurd.
Yeah, exactly. And that catch from Edelman in that game was insane.
Yeah.
Okay. That was the same one. Okay. Yeah, my diamond was the 2022 AFC divisional round, the Chiefs versus the Bills. Yeah. Mahomes or Josh Allen goes up late with that absolute piss missile to Gabe Davis to basically get out in front. To send the game into OT, tying it up. I'm fumbling. Josh Allen with the late score to Gabe Davis with a piss missile to get them ahead 3 with 13 seconds left. And then Mahomes comes out there with 2 timeouts, 13 seconds, marches down the field, impossibly gets a field goal with none other than Tony Romo commentating this game. And the rest of that game, Josh Allen has to sit on the sideline with his helmet unstrapped and just watch all this unfold.
Yeah.
To get into OT and the Chiefs to go marching right down the field and score. And that's when all the uproar started about that a team should get the chance to have the ball as well in OT and all this kind of stuff, because they felt horrible for Josh Allen, which goes back to what you said earlier, poor Bills. And the Chiefs win that game 42-36 in a very high scoring, just greatness versus greatness game.
Yeah. And it was pivotal enough that like a rule change was made after that game.
Yes.
Like they changed overtime rules specifically for that game.
Exactly.
Or after that game.
Yeah. Like when Dez caught it, they changed it to you had to make a football move.
You had to bring that up two weeks in a row, brother, man. You had to bring
that. Yeah. Oh my gosh. In the podcast. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go through our NFC and AFC championship round predictions. We're going to start on the NFC side. we got the number 1 seed 49ers taking on the number 3 seed Lions. So I got the betting stats here. The money line is Lions plus 230, 49ers minus 285. That is the money line. And the spread,
he's got the lines now.
Yes,
Let's
sir.
go.
Yes,
You
sir.
degenerate. Let's go.
Yeah, the spread is the Lions plus 6.5. If you wanted to bet and make profit, you have to at least bet $105. Minus 105 for the Lions, and then the 49ers minus 6.5 with minus 115 odds. And then your total over and under is 51 with which is a pretty good score for this game. I think that's pretty average. So with all that being said, I'm gonna let you start with your prediction and I will follow.
Yeah. My numbers are they're like half a point off each way. I don't know what site you use. I use, shout out covers.com for all mine and whatnot, because the reason I like them is because they take like every like sport book, everything like that, and they average it out. So it's all about the same. So I have San Francisco -7, over under 50.5. So it's generally the same. But my biggest takeaways from this is going to be like, hey, can Purdy elevate this offense? Like, is the offense, like, is he going to make the offense better, or is it going to be like last week where, he kind of struggled a little bit and it took him a little time. Second, I have, 49ers obviously being a pretty good defense and whatnot. How is Detroit going to utilize their running backs? Are they going to do it like they did last game where kind of everybody kind of got the ball? We got them out in motion. We got them out in space and did stuff like that. Are they going to stick with that, or are they going to, throw it away and then just deviate from the plan? Next is, will Debo play? Like I said, it seems like when he doesn't play, it seems like their offense is a little iffy. If he plays, it could be a different thing. And then I think Detroit, you've got to sell out on stopping Christian McCaffrey. However it may be, how some defenses put a spy on a quarterback. I feel like you've got to have like your best athlete out there, and he has got to be with and on Christian McCaffrey everywhere he goes. Like, obviously you've got to stack the box, but like if it's, seems like passing down situations or something like that, like you have to have a guy on him at all times. And it can't just be like, a linebacker. I think you've got to drop a safety and like really have one of your most athletic dudes out there. Because like we said, he seems to be the key to win and what they fall back on when they need to make a big play. And all that being said, I have San Francisco 27, Detroit 21. I'm going to veer from my options or my takes last week where I just, blew the top off and was in, my mental capacity was decimated due to that week. And so I made a bunch of egregious takes and they were all wrong. I'm going to go a little more calmer, safer takes this week.
I mean, at least you went for the risk there in the divisional round. All great points. I mean, it worked when Parsons shadowed Christian McCaffrey in the 2022 divisional round, and really shut down the offense. So that's a great defensive analysis. The Lions defense, I don't think they're going to be able to hold this 49ers offensive scheme. I think their destiny is probably going to end. I think Goff is going to struggle against, in all honesty, their first real tough opponent in the playoffs, where like a juggernaut, one that's like, oh, they were favored to win the Super Bowl,
the World Cup.
It's the World Series. And I do think Purdy will perform up to standards, which is, just keeping the ball protected. The weather's going to be probably more favorable in this game. But I think you'll see a CMC masterclass. I think regardless of who you kind of put on him to watch him, I think you're going to see a great production from him to get them into the Super Bowl, which hilariously, listening to the score prediction you had, mine is identical. The 49ers 27, Lions 21. That way I guess now we know that if we're wrong, then we're both completely wrong.
Yeah, we don't know ball.
Then we don't know ball together.
Another point.
Exactly.
They're playing San Francisco's outside, right?
Yeah.
They're playing outdoors. Just take that in consideration with the Lions.
Yes.
Indoor
Not
team.
an indoor ball club, baby.
Yeah. So
yeah, Dan Campbell's nutsack's gonna be a little shorter,
it's
a
gonna
little
be
smaller.
it's gonna be a little chillier, maybe a slight breeze, you know what happens. And so,
Yeah.
it might just he might 4th and 2, he's like, let's punt it. It's like,
yeah, it's a little cool out
yeah.
here. Let's get this game over with.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Number 1 seeded Ravens versus the number 3 Chiefs. The money line on this one is the Chiefs plus 146, Ravens minus 174. We got the spread, Chiefs plus 3.5, Ravens minus 3.5 favored to win this game. The total over under is 44.5, which is, again, I got mine from Forbes. Yours might be, half a point off or on. And so I'll start on this one. I think Baltimore's defense is going to give major fits to Kansas City. I think it's going to do a fantastic job of eliminating the run game with Isaiah Pacheco. I know he runs hard, but without Pacheco, you can still kind of escape not having a run game with a quarterback at the caliber of Patrick Mahomes. Which, speaking of Mahomes, I think he's going to face a lot of pressure in this game from their pass rush, and just that linebacker core in general just does a phenomenal job of just locking down whoever you want them to get the ball to. And it's kind of proven in the NFL, especially this year, that if you have a very solid linebacker core, you're going to go a long, long way. And teams like Cowboys should take notes on that. And so I don't think Kansas City's defense, as good as it's been all year, is going to be able to contain Lamar's athleticism, which we talked about earlier in the podcast about his ability to mix and match, whether he needs to sling it or not, and that he's just so dynamic that it's going to be impossible to stop. And so I've got the Ravens beating the Chiefs 30-24. However, I am not accounting for the fact that what the NFL wants and what they've wanted all along, if you can see the writing on the wall, is that they want Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift making out underneath the confetti. And they could stop at nothing to get the Chiefs into the Super Bowl. I would not be shocked. It's Patrick Mahomes as well. But it seems like it's kind of been scripted towards them to make it. And it's kind of been, I wouldn't say just no one. I mean, the Ravens are the better team here, and they should win. And I trust in Lamar Jackson. There is only one man left in Gotham to save us, and that is Lamar Jackson. The entire country is rooting for you, Lamar Jackson. For the first time in your life, they're all rooting for you to beat the big bad wolf. He accepted the villain role. Well, you're the second coming of Christ, and be the first quarterback that plays like Michael Vick with that dynamic athleticism to make a Super Bowl in recent memory. Why not you? So I'm rooting for Lamar Jackson this weekend. Prove everybody wrong or right, however you want to see it. And I've got the Ravens winning 30-24.
Yeah, and also, if the Ravens win, it would save us from the atrocity of having to watch all the white people in Taylor Swift's box swag surf again. That was the worst display I've ever seen. And that was just a travesty. I even saw like an article written what exactly is swag surfing? It's like, brother, you need to stop.
Stop.
You want to talk about uncultured, unseasoned chicken? That's it. An article to say what is the swag surfing? It's like, brother,
high school kickoff. That's what it is.
Yeah. Just one time, just one time, please have some feel. But anyway, if hopefully they win, so we don't have to see that again. However, I think for the Chiefs to win, they've got to contain Lamar Jackson running. Okay. Not that he can't do it with his arm. I think he can. I just don't have confidence in those receivers like I haven't had confidence in them all year. I think Zay Flowers is very good, and I think that's Isaiah Likely is very good. I think that the Chiefs defense can match up well against their top receivers and their top weapons and whatnot. And with that, I think the biggest thing is going to be able to see if the Chiefs can repeat the offense that they had last week. Now it's going to be a much tougher opponent, obviously, but it seems like they're getting it going at the right time. With the Ravens, I think this is going to be one game where they can't. I don't think they need to leave their script and try to do anything too fancy. They're a very good team. Their defense is very good. I don't think they need to do anything just incredibly, off script just to beat this team. Just because, you see the name, you see Mahomes, you see the Chiefs, you're like, oh my God, we got to do this. It's like, no, y'all are very good. Do what you do well, and it should work out for you, and whatnot. However, like I said before, I believe Mahomes is inevitable.
Oh, shit.
You see the writing on the wall. You see the Super Bowl. You see the Super Bowl colors. They got the red in them. You follow it. What's going to bring the most money is when Patrick Mahomes makes it to a Super Bowl again with Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift sitting up in the box and all that's involved. I'm following the money here. I'm picking the Chiefs to win in a close game, 24-20. I think Mahomes is inevitable. I hope they prove me wrong, but it's just like, as much as I don't want to go with Mahomes, it's like, how do you not, like, just seeing what he did last week and how it was like polar opposite of what they did throughout the season, and being able to turn it up in a playoff game, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough.
It's kind of funny.
I'm taking Mahomes. I'm taking Kansas City 24-20.
Yes, sir. It's kind of funny how both of our takes are kind of outside of football, really.
Yeah.
For that game, it's like we're both like, please beat Taylor Swift. And it's like Mahomes and Taylor Swift are inevitable if you follow the money. Both can be true at the same time. So we'll see. So we basically got the 49ers entering the Super Bowl. And we're hoping the Ravens get there. But it could be either or. It's going to be a tight matchup. Both sides. I think the Lions will give some fits. I mean, don't be shocked if the Lions get it done. They are a team of destiny.
And if you had like the 49ers and the Ravens in the Super Bowl, man, that's just history, like two gritty teams, like in a Super Bowl. Like I could expect, like, if they made it, you could expect like a 9-6 victory or something like that's just like seeing the names of those teams and what they've all done in the past. Like they've always had good defenses. Just seeing like the LSU Alabama, like 9-6 49ers win.
You're like, God. Yeah, exactly. Either way, I think it's going to be an entertaining Super Bowl. And follow the logo colors as well. You never know. It depicts the Ravens and 49ers. If you really want to believe it's scripted. But yeah, I mean, this has been the Rook and the Kid podcast, episode 32, the Rook and the Medical Guy. And we want to say one thing before we leave. If you try and take our Zins, motherfucker, we're gonna come out. Yeah, exactly. But if you're, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, if you're a first-time listener, if this is your if you've been following along, just remember to like, follow, and subscribe and share with your friends. And you can find us on all platforms. If you want to listen to strictly audio, you can click on the Apple Podcast label. You can find us at TRAK Podcast, and then Spotify and YouTube are our video and audio platforms as well, if you want to find us on there. And on all of our social media websites, that being Instagram at TRAKPod or Twitter at the TRAKPod. You can find our link tree, which gives you access to all those different sorts of things. But per usual, however it plays out this week, you get us next week on Wednesday, shattering yet another script. And we will be back in full motion. And it is rumored that the kid is going to be returning for next week's episode. So we are ready for that, for the Rook and the Kid episode. So thank you guys for coming out. The Medical Guy, as always. Thank you.
Yeah, go Stars.
Go Stars. And congratulations to Adrian Beltre for making the Cooperstown Hall of Fame today. So that's kind of why I wore it. Almost forgot to say it.
Nice.
All right. See you guys next Wednesday. Fuck Taylor Swift. See y'all.